Here's a segment from the latest edition of St. Charles Parish Today, a monthly local talk show.
Flood insurance has been a hot-button issue in St. Charles Parish since 2013, and it's not going away anytime soon. Over the years, we have sent mailers, written press releases, and produced multiple videos urging our residents to purchase flood insurance, despite the uncertainty of the flood maps that the National Flood Insurance Program is using and the legislation in the nation's capital. But just how critical is it to have flood insurance, and how easy is it to get? Joining me today are Councilmembers Fisher-Perrier and Dick Gibbs, both of whom work as insurance professionals and have specific experience in flood insurance. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show with me today.
Thank you, Tristan. Again.
Okay, so we've been over this before, but you guys are both licensed insurance agents. Tell me a little bit about your experience in insurance and also specifically in flood insurance.
I'm a property and casualty producer for a local independent insurance agency here for about 10 years now. So I've been writing flood insurance policies for about 10 years and really dug into it when Bigger Waters came down. So that was my first experience with trying to figure out how to change it and why to change it and what the federal government was trying to do with it. So about 10 years.
I have a little bit more experience, but probably not as smart as Julia. I've got 30 years in the industry. We have a insurance agency in downtown New Orleans. We write business all over the metro area. It's property and casualty. Been experienced in flood since I started, so for about 30 years. I don't know if you're going to ask this, but I'll tell you now. Our agency wrote the very first flood policy in America in 1969. It was, the premium was $35.
Wow.
Right.
Well, if only.
Right.
So it's safe to say both of you have a considerable amount of experience writing flood insurance policies in your private life. Julia, how often do you get the questions about flood insurance rates and maps?
Probably.
As a councilman?
Sure. 1 out of every 2 questions from constituents probably is regarding flood insurance, flood maps, levies, something in the realm of that category. They'll range anywhere from when are we going to adopt our new maps, when are we going to have a complete levy system, when is the federal government going to change the rates, when is the federal government going to renew the program meaning NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. So, you know, I'd say 50-50. It's been a hot topic for at least the last 3 years here for me, and I've been here in local government for 5 years, so the majority of my time serving has been really focused on flood insurance.
And Dick, you mentioned that you guys wrote the first flood insurance policy, but how easy is it for residents to get flood insurance?
To me, it's very easy to get flood insurance.
Absolutely.
Everybody should have flood insurance, whether you're in a flood zone or not. We can go into what the flood zones are or what they aren't, but they're all alphabetically categorized. But everyone, regardless of their situation, should have a flood insurance policy. The constituents that we have in my district constantly ask about flood, the flood mapping, the flood premiums. But in our agency, we also train every one of our employees, no matter what product you're selling, talk about flood because everybody needs it.
And that's just probably across the board.
Agree. You know, some people use the term non-flood zone in the flood world, in the insurance world. I don't think that's a proper term to use. You can say non-required flood zone, and that would only mean that you either don't have a mortgage that requires you to have it, or you're in an X or B or C zone, which are non-required. Everyone in Louisiana is in a flood zone, if you ask me. So, yeah, I don't see that there's really any reason anyone should not have flood insurance. A non-required policy, you're looking at under $450 a year to protect your probably biggest investment.
Less than $40 a month.
Right.
Please.
Yeah, that's not bad.
No.
Yep.
Okay, so if someone wanted to buy flood insurance, where could they go? And I did some research on FEMA's website last night, just
Sure.
as someone inexperienced in
If
it.
somebody really doesn't know where to go, they can Google flood
Absolutely.
insurance, and you'll get a myriad of agency, local, anywhere, pretty much anybody that writes property and casualty insurance will be able to provide you a flood insurance policy.
Yep.
The rates do not vary. They're all set by the federal government. So it's
For
not
better
a
or for
competitive
worse.
situation.
For better or for worse.
Right. Well, if we want to get into that, and I do have a couple comments about that, and then it's the only thing that Julia and I have ever disagreed on regarding the flood.
We're getting there.
Privatizing.
We're getting there.
And/or let the federal government run it.
We're getting there.
But anyway, to answer your question, it's very, very, very easy to get a flood policy.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Anybody can write it. And I mean, its National Flood Insurance Program is the carrier, but there's a servicing agent just about on every corner of the whole state. So.
Awesome. Okay, so now you touched upon this a few minutes ago, but I'm just bringing it back up. What are some of the reasons, and I think you both come across this, why people are averse to getting flood insurance, or they think that they shouldn't get it? What are those, and I know you hear them as councilmen and in your private lives as well.
It's cost. That's the only thing that I hear as a deterrent for somebody not getting flood insurance. Cost is the only thing. You know, like I mentioned earlier, if you have a mortgage and you're in a required flood zone, you're required to have flood insurance, regardless of the price, unfortunately. That can mean that the federal government's gonna, you know, possibly raise rates up to be really expensive, or they can work with us and hopefully make some things affordable for the South and the coast. But the only person in this state that would have the chance of not having a flood insurance policy is somebody without a mortgage or somebody in an ex-flood zone. And if the cost is $450 or less, I don't see a reason why. I don't see that.
So your advice is it's worth it.
It's absolutely worth it. I mean, look at what just happened in Denham Springs.
Right.
You know, we know that there was a flood where they didn't expect a flood.
Wasn't that a non-flood zone?
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
Those zones are not 100% accurate. That's part of our fight in DC to try to, you know, explain that some of their data and some of their processes and methods are not 100% accurate. And unfortunately, a flood in a non-flood zone shows that.
Yep.
So.
You've both, since you've been here, joined the parish council and the parish president's lobbying efforts in DC at some point or another. Tell us about that. Do we have any update on affordable flood insurance rates and what's going on with NFIP?
Yeah, the rates are actually set to renew in June or July, I believe. The program itself is set to renew in September. This past February, myself, Councilman Cluley, Councilman Bellick, Darren Dewey with the administration, and Carla Chasson with the administration traveled to DC. Last year, Councilman Gibbs came with us as well. And we meet with the state delegates. We meet with everyone in the Louisiana delegation to try to explain what we think the program should look like, especially since we're ground zero. We're the ones who have the direct contact with the constituents. Not that the state is out of touch or the feds are out of touch, but we're right there and we're up close and personal. Councilman Gibbs mentioned privatization. It's an idea that was really scary to Louisiana for a long time, but we've come to the conclusion that we're going to have to explore that somewhat, I think. And Congressman Graves has been pretty instrumental in understanding what our needs are. And I think there's a way. I think they're going to come to a conclusion. Some of the legislation that's up right now looks like they're going to have bits and pieces that are privatized, a small portion to allow the program to try to neutralize and get rid of its debt, but at the same time allowing the federal portion to be affordable and the privatization to not cherry pick. So sort of a balance. If you split it up, it may be affordable for us. Some people are going to see increases, but some people may see decreases. So that looks like the direction that the National Flood Insurance Program is going for September. So I think things are looking up.
And is it something that when you meet with all these legislators, it's still a big issue for them too, though?
Absolutely.
It's not just us that's having.
Yes. Real quick, my short comment on this is for the whole council, pretty much for the state. Julia has championed this whole issue and has really taken it to a very high level. And when we have questions, we have concerns or anything, we go to Julia. For whatever reason, she has really, really grasped this and has educated all of us when we need it. So, kudos to you for doing that. But it's a lot of work. Privatization and having the federal government run a program, waste, fraud, and abuse, it's in it. It's just like Medicaid. Mm-hmm. We don't have the federal government in homeowner. We don't have it in auto. We don't have it in any other property and casualty coverage. So you have actuaries that set the rates, do everything, do all the loss control. For whatever reason, I can't figure out why the federal government has to stay in the flood insurance program. And hopefully we're gravitating toward the private sector.
Yeah. Well, like she said, maybe there will be some type of compromise. So.
I think there's,
It's got to start that way.
yeah.
Let's talk about NACO, because this is something that the parish does every summer. We go, particularly a delegation goes to the NACO annual conference and lobbies with other communities. And I know you were part of this last year, Julia. What are they saying?
About 3 years ago, we began using NACO as an outlet for us to have a platform on a larger level. We put forth a couple of resolutions that basically spelled out in formal letter form what we thought the National Flood Insurance Program should look like, how FEMA handled things. So there were a couple of issues that would all correlate to flood insurance. And that was about 3 years ago. When we first put these resolutions up for a vote amongst the entire local government sector of the United States, we got some resistance. We passed our resolutions the first time we put them forward, but not unanimously by any means. So every year, those same resolutions come back. We'll tweak them, we'll change some of the details that we think the program should look like. The grandfathering clause was instrumental, came back, and NACO was instrumental in getting that to come back. They were big help. This past year, I put forth the same resolutions with a couple of changes, and they passed unanimously. So that tells me that the temperature of the country realizes this is a national problem. This is not just a coastal problem. It's not just a Louisiana problem, because that was some of the concern and some of the pushback we got in the beginning. They thought, well, you built in a bowl, why should we help you? Well, when we realized, and when we showed them what our value was to the rest of the country, when we showed them what their risk was, anybody who's around a body of water,
Right.
they jumped on board. So it took about 3 years to get the nation's local governments to jump on board, but they're behind us. They're with us on this.
Would you guys say that we're leading that effort? That we're
Oh, my goodness.
Absolutely.
And Katrina didn't help.
It didn't.
You know, that was probably the catalyst of
Yep.
of them, the powers to be, of pulling back on Louisiana. And then we had to, I can't take any credit for it, but they were able to get them to understand the value of Louisiana. South Louisiana, it's a port city, one of the largest
Yep.
ports in the country. It has a lot of value.
Yep.
And it took a while to get them to understand that.
Yep.
Well, is there anything else you guys want residents to know about flood insurance, or just that it's easy, you can
Get
get
it.
it literally anywhere?
I think
It's important, it's worth
It's
it.
extremely important, and I think you're going to hear from Earl if you haven't already heard from Earl. The East Bank had a big change, and I think
Oh, my
this is
goodness, I was
huge.
affected by it.
Yeah, it was huge.
The
So they had a
preferred
huge
risk.
Yes.
They've got a big. If you want to consider it a rate decrease across the river, so if they don't have it, they should get it.
Right, right. And just keep in mind, a $450 policy is going to cover $250,000 on your property, $100,000 on your contents.
Yep.
So if you have a mortgage that's under $350 and you have a total flood loss, you're covered.
Yep.
Because keep in mind, your homeowner insurance does not cover you for flood.
Never.
You have to have a flood policy. A lot of people don't understand that. I wouldn't understand it if I wasn't in the business. So the best education is hopefully through TV, social media, but everybody needs a flood policy.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you guys for coming and joining
Thank you
us today.
so much, Jeff.
Thanks for having
Tristan.
us, Tristan.
Look for the entire episode at www.scptoday.com or on SCP TV.